6:01. Okay.
Are we on?
Guys, are we on?
Yes, we are on.
Okay. Sorry about that, audience. These are the old farts. Before we start tonight, I have to tell you some sad news. Pat Moreno, a longtime member of the group, his wife passed away last night. She was a very, very nice lady, and she will be missed. Okay, back to the show. Group has agreed to talk about an interesting topic, which is what is an American? What makes somebody an American? How do you become an American? And what what is it that we expect Americans to be? So I personally think that Americans are the people who accept the ideals of America. I say ideals because we've never achieved them, but in general, we're working in that direction. Second definition of American is somebody who's just born here, happens to be here. And, it's kind of like family. You have some members of your family who you really care about, who you feel very close to, and you have some members of your family who are just cousins or some other former relative. So in any case, that's what I think of as an American. Get into details later, but Omanon?
Well, it's an interesting question, having not been born here and having become a citizen here. It becomes important to recognize why I am here. I came to this country to make sure that I can contribute something to the overall output of the country in terms of education, research, and be useful for the community, and at the same time take advantage of the opportunities that are available here, which are not available in other parts of the world. For example, the freedoms that are available and the opportunities that are available, the entrepreneurship spirit that is available here, which is not available that freely in other parts of the world. So, given that, I take it very seriously that when somebody becomes a naturalized citizen, they are part of the society and should be held responsible the same way a person who is born, was born here, no matter what color their skin is.
Yeah, well, I think that an American is somebody that actually is here, whether they be a citizen or naturalized citizen or somebody awaiting citizenship. Um, they're still part of our society. They are contributing to it some in great ways, others in lesser ways, but they are part of the society. They have ideas, they have opinions, and we should respect all of their opinions, whether they agree or disagree. Um, and this shows an example. We don't always agree to the same thing, and we are all citizens. But I think that we shouldn't cast aspersions on people that have different ideas. Especially, we shouldn't cast aspersions on people who aren't citizens yet. And that's the way I feel. I think everyone has something to contribute, whether it's good or bad, but everybody has something to contribute to society, just like everybody else in the world has something to contribute to their own country. And I'm fairly pleased with most of the people in the country. There are exceptions, as in my opinion, our leader, who is does not have the best interests of the population at heart. But that's beside the point.
I mean, that then brings us into the whole family structure of the society, whether we like them or not, as Bob pointed out, and as you also pointed it out, that but we should learn to respect the opinions of others and respect and value their contribution, whether we like them or not, and at the same time be able to have a society that moves the country forward as a whole, and maybe baby steps, but moves it forward so that it keeps that flame of freedom aloft.
Yeah. I think that that idea of contributing something, whether they contribute something to us or we contribute something to them,
Mm-hmm.
it's the give and take of ideas, and maybe something ends up in between two people, the idea ends up in the middle, or not necessarily 100% one way or 100% the other. Everyone has something to contribute to everybody else.
Actually, listening to what Paul was saying, I'm thinking of taking it one step further. This country was founded, it was probably just propaganda, but we quoted every day on the idea that if you pay taxes, if you make a contribution, whether it be financial or whatever, you should have a say. And it should not depend on whether you were born here or you took a test after 20 years or something like that. If you're a resident, somebody who comes to Burlington and lives here for some period of time, more than just a casual hotel stay, should have a say in what goes on in Burlington because they're affected by it. Now, whether their say should be the only say that matters, no, it should not be. It should be, again, the majority or the plurality, because not everybody votes. They should have a say. And so the concept of citizenship, I think, needs to be reconsidered a little bit. On the other hand, there are people who I'm going to throw out something just because it's bothering me not to say it, and that is if somebody is in a coma, they're not contributing. Are they a citizen? Should they have a say? And I think the answer is no, because they don't physically have a way of saying. But it begins to give you a way of thinking about how, when you look at a particular situation, whether that individual or that group should have a say.
Now, you brought in an entirely different aspect of it, because if you are a society where, as Paul pointed out, and you pointed out, if they are citizens or not, they are part of the society. They have been each person as individuals and each family have been contributing to the well-being of the, for example, Burlington, and at the same time they should also have something they should have a say in what affects them actually. And at the same time, when you then bring up the person who is comatose, that means society has a responsibility to make sure that they are comfortably placed although they cannot contribute while they are in coma, because you can have person in coma because they got into coma, or they could be in coma because they were medically induced coma. But that means society has a responsibility towards individuals who are not able to do things on their own. See, that gets into our whole healthcare issues, healthcare problem actually for the whole society. That means society has a responsibility towards everybody and reciprocally towards each other.
I
Yes.
agree. I was going to extend it a little further, but you already did that for me. Uh, our Constitution, for example, says that everyone in the country has a right to due process, legal.
Yes.
But medical care should also be part of that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's here for whatever reason, whether they came voluntarily, they were dragged, they happened to be born here, whatever reason, society has a responsibility towards them, and hopefully they have a responsibility to society. I think that's the more difficult thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I was, excuse me, I was visiting a person like you described today, as a matter of fact. She's in a hospice in a coma, and she's not in a coma, but she's in hospice, and basically she was asleep the whole time we were visiting. And you know, prior to that, she was a contributing person in society. So that's interesting.
And being of our advanced age, these considerations like what Paul was just describing are real.
I mean that actually should not actually be dependent upon whether you were born here or you are naturalized citizen here, or you are a green card holder here. You are here, so the person has a responsibility towards society, and society in turn has a responsibility towards them, because we are working together for the whole country. So that should be is ideal. But what happens is people have political motives which drives various ideologies, and then we see difficulties.
Well, what is it in the preamble or the Declaration of Independence? I'm not sure, but all people are created equal.
Equal, yes.
Yes, in the eyes of whatever deity you happen to believe in, and specifically in the eyes of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Addressing something that you just said, I was just reading an article this afternoon, and it seems to apply. The article was saying that groups are basically two different kinds. Whatever groups they are, they could be a family, they could be the old farts, they could be BCAT, they could be Burlington, whatever group. They basically break out into two different types of organization. One is centered. Everybody who kind of believes in what the group believes in is included. And the goal is to include a bigger and bigger mass of individuals. The other group has a border, and they're trying to keep people out. Only the people who agree with whatever are inside, and the border protects you from the non-believers, if you will. I personally am in the one of the first group. I want to include as many people as possible, and I want them to kind of agree with me. But even if they don't, as long as they're not working against me, then I think they're welcome. And what Omar was describing a moment ago, was that we seem to be moving towards the second group,
Mhm.
where that kind of organization where, I'm whatever, and unless you do exactly the way I say, I don't want you to have anything to do with it. I would want you to go away.
Or I'm willing to do something to make you go away, like the incident in the news today where somebody drove into
Yeah, synagogue.
a synagogue.
And as far as I can tell, that's about it. Well, he went. I did read something that said he went down a hole in his truck
Yes.
for some period of time before he stopped or was stopped, as the case may be.
Yeah, he was terminated.
Oh, okay. That's kind of scary. And then there was another guy who went after a university.
Yep.
And again, I don't know what happened there. I just saw the headline.
I think he shot a couple of people at
Oh.
the university.
Okay,
Yeah,
that accomplishes a great deal.
yeah.
I mean, that's the sad thing is that people get motivated by wrong ideology. Well, to me, for me, the wrong ideology is that they would like to change people because whatever they believe is the right way, and then they can use any means they like to do that. But at the same, that's the extreme, which should not, which the society should actually be cognizant of and have measures in place so that does not happen. But I don't know whether we are capable of preempting these things. On the other, that's extreme. But on the other hand, it's perfectly normal that you have guilds. You have carpenter guilds. You have other plumber guilds. You have electrician grids guild, and they are perfectly okay to have those because they can support each other. You have physician societies, nurses societies, just like that they can support each other. But as long as they are supporting each other and also uplifting the society because of their ability to unite and move their craft forward, society benefits. But as long as as soon as they begin to change other people, as soon as they begin to overwhelm other people and want them to be the way they want them to be, that's where the where the trouble comes in. And then they use violent means. That's the second step to that, and you can't have that.
I'm sorry, I missed the last sentence you said.
No,
The
what
second
I was
step.
saying is that the summary is that guilds are okay, but as long as the guilds move the country forward by contributing their skill, but not try to overwhelm the rest of the country by saying that this is the only way everybody has to become a plumber. If you are not a plumber, you should be destined to basically stand in front of my AK-47, which is what we see happening with the Terminator ideologies, which is some society should actually have measures in place rather than thoughts and prayers. That's what we are doing at the moment. And that does not help. I don't know what the solution is. At the political level, there has to be courage to do something.
Yeah, you wonder about the phrase thoughts and prayers. I wonder how often, number one, people think. Number two, pray for the the individuals that's assaulted, either verbally or physically.
I think that it's part of a solution. When my father died, I went to a temple with my grandfather's temple in Brooklyn, and we had what amounted to a wake. It wasn't called that, but for all intents and purposes, it was the same thing. And I stood in a line, and these lines and lines of people who I had never seen before and would never see again came in and told me how sad they were that my father had died. And going into it, I thought this is one of the stupidest things I've ever done. And I've done many. It was amazing. I came out of there and I felt a little bit better. So thoughts and prayers, I think, is meaningful, but if it's only, okay, I did my duty, I'm going to go back home and have a cup of coffee or a drink or something, and I'm not going to prevent the cancer that took my father, you know, they're very limited. And very often we talk about thoughts and prayers when we're talking about people killed by gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who generally say that are the people who are going to vote against anything that might limit
Mm-hmm.
the access to guns. So I find myself torn because it did matter to me, that it turned out, I was very surprised, that people did care.
At the personal level, I agree with you actually. But what I'm saying is the people who are policymakers, if they always go up and say thoughts and prayers, but which and not bring up any solutions, we are back to same stage zero, which is not good. And we have gone through this over and over and keep on going.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. So I think the interaction, the being a member of a group, is critical to humans and most groups of animals. We are group animals. We work best, we're happiest when we're members of a group. And thoughts and prayers, to me at least, means the group sympathizes with what happened to you. So I think that that's important. But if that's the only thing, then we have a problem.
Yeah, you do wonder if they actually did prayer for that person. You know, I bet you know every time somebody says that, you know, there's only a small percentage they think about it, yes, but only a small percentage where they go off and pray for that person.
Right. I would not pray. I don't believe in prayer. But I believe in being a member of a group. And if your way of being a member in the group is to pray, fine.
Yeah.
Well, at the psychological level, so at the level of the cognitive level of the brain, the ability to empathize, ability to hear other people, sympathize with you, does create a palliative effect on the brain function at that time. And so that's why whether you pray or not may not actually matter, but what matters at that time is that the just the idea and the experience of hearing other people express their opinions in terms of that how nice your dad was, how well liked he was, how nice a co-worker he was, or how great a supervisor he was. At that time of grief, it really creates a kind of, if you like, a kind of an umbrella to take shelter under.
What you're saying, I totally agree with. However, the instinctive he'll be in my thoughts and prayers, and then that's the last time they ever think
Yeah.
or pray. It bothers me.
That's what I raised the whole point. In fact, I have a problem with that. That's why I brought this up. That if this is only limited to that at the overall policy package, we are not moving. We're not moving ahead. We
Yeah.
are basically jogging in place, and that's where we are. I mean, look at the carnage the guy would have done, having gone into the synagogue, driven his truck in, and had he not been stopped, rightfully so, he would have caused a lot of damage, and he has caused a lot of damage because the building was still burning. That's not good.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that that building was burning.
Yeah, there was
I'm only getting
smoke
bits
was
and
coming
pieces.
out.
Yeah, you
Oh,
could see
wow.
the smoke
Okay.
on TV.
Because I did hear something when they were talking about that the family is expected to go back the weekend for a particular ceremony or
Yeah,
event or something. If it was burning on
the
Thursday
car was-
night.
I think the car was burning.
Oh, the car maybe. Okay.
Yeah, car had caught fire, I think, but it was still inside, and the smoke was billowing out.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just assuming that was it, 'cause from what I watched on TV.
Again, you get bits and pieces over some. So we were talking a little bit about who an American is, etc. There's a bill in Congress, which is kind of how I got to the original topic, called the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act purpose, nominal purpose, is to make sure that only verified citizens are allowed to vote, which means that if you're a visitor, you can't vote. If you're haven't been naturalized, you can't vote. If you can't prove that you are a citizen, and it defines a citizen, which is kind of interesting. I'll get into that in a minute. But it defines a citizen as someone who has either been naturalized and has their papers, or was born here and can prove that this birth certificate is them.
Yeah, and the tough thing about a birth certificate is you bring your birth certificate, a female who happens to be married brings her birth certificate, and her last name does not correspond to the birth certificate. And, that causes problems with 30% of the females who want to vote, because they do bring their birth certificate, and their name on their driver's license is different.
Or my mother was born at home. At some point, a few days later, somebody, when they realized she was actually going to survive, because there was a question at the time, they wrote us some kind of a birth certificate. I don't know who did it. I don't know if they were legally allowed to do it. This was well over 100 years ago. I don't know. And nobody else who's alive knows. So, what do you do there? What do you do when this person who is filling out the birth certificate and is doing 20 or 30, meanwhile delivering babies and dealing with other crises, checks the wrong box or misspells the name, or some point that person decides to be a different sex? Or,
well, if that's the case, certainly they can't vote.
well, no, that's a given. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why the rules are being set up that way, because we don't want those beings to exist.
Well, I mean, personally, I would not have any problem if there is a legitimate legitimate ID card. Let me put that up there. But they what is interesting, there is the heritage. I think I talked about it, that there's a Heritage Foundation report 1982 to 2025, and they list 1620 votes fraudulently cast from 1982 to 2025. And out of that, I noticed there alien number of votes cast by aliens is 100, and number of people who are non-resident is 25. So you can see amongst the millions of voters, this number does this number call for a designation of voter fraud? That's the my question actually.
Yeah, and those numbers prove it's irrelevant
Yeah,
because
that's what,
it
and
had.
it comes from the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, I mean that's probably nationwide.
Yeah,
It might be.
that,
Maybe it's on a specific state, but even
mm,
in a specific state, those numbers are irrelevant.
actually, if you go to Heritage Foundation, they have a country map, the whole country map, and then you can actually say, tell me all the states, all they have. I think they have made 9 categories of fraudulent votes, and total is 1620. So that's why I worry about where is this thing coming from? Is it
It's
just propaganda, or is it just grab the votes, or what?
It's,
it's coming to reduce the number of people that can vote, especially if they're a certain type who are likely to vote for the other party.
I think that's the key. If you can, if the politician can pick his voters, he's more likely to continue to be in power. If the voters pick the politician, the chances are less. And again, in part goes back to the thing I was talking about earlier, the border type of environment
Yeah.
and the central type of environment. The border works really well as long as you can enforce that border. And I think the SAVE Act is the most recent uh, attempt to do that. In the South, they had Jim Crow and poll taxes and all kinds of things to make sure that the people who weren't going to vote for you didn't vote. And
So they
this
are
is
kept outside that boundary. They
yeah,
are excluded automatically.
right. And the boundary inside were the voters. And
Yes.
if I could keep all these others out, others, it's a very interesting word, uh, then then I will continue to stay in power and maybe legitimately try to do something I feel is important and good for society, or not.
Yeah, something that's important to billionaires.
Billionaires are people too.
Yes, billionaires are people too, but they don't really need extra help,
Okay.
especially not a huge tax cut to benefit them.
Well, you see, that tax cut, it's not to benefit them. It's so that they will make investments
Oh, I
so
see.
that
Oh,
all
okay.
the other people will benefit.
I see.
I mean, that's the logic actually, that the investments are driven by such individuals, which is partly true also. That, but at the same time, you also have to see that they are also looking out for their where is
Right.
the bottom line.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can look at history. In the 1950s, I think most people would legitimately say the United States was at its peak of economic power. Everybody, the total society was moving up at a rapid rate. Everybody was doing well. And the top rate for income taxes was 90%. And the key, not most people didn't pay 90%. Let's not pretend that they did. But it didn't stop somebody from making an investment if they thought they could make an extra 10% over what they were making before. So,
I mean, that's how the industries were created, actually.
yeah, well, the fact that the rest of the world had been bombed to smithereens. So,
What is the top rate now?
35, 39, I think.
Wow.
I'm not in a position
Yeah, I
where I
mean,
worry
you know,
about it.
it's a
But no, it's not very high, and the deductions are better, I think, than they were back in the 50s. But what the hell? I, I remember when I was first worrying about income taxes in the mid 60s. I had my first job, and I was making enough money actually to pay taxes. And I was talking to somebody who'd been doing it for a while, and he was saying, look at all these deductions, look at all these things. The tax system is the way the population wants it. Everybody gets a little bit, and then they're willing to let everybody else have something too. And in part, that's what our tax system is today. It's a centered organization, if you will. You know, as long as I get mine, I'll let you have yours. And if you look at the big beautiful bill, or actually the first one from the first Trump administration, that's where the real tax break came in. The new one is really nothing more than extending it. But what he did was, it was really smart. He said, everybody has a much higher standard deduction. So you don't have to go through all these rigmarole with Schedule B and Schedule A and C and all this other stuff. You know, you got yours. And then you just, go on to live your life. Everybody else did a hell of a lot better, but you got yours.
Well, the problem with the current tax structure is we have trillions in deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing anything to stop that, to turn it around. They're trying to increase it.
Well,
And
let me take issue with that a little bit. When they look at their deficit and they say, we don't have the money to do X and Y, the things that the X and Y favor the poor people.
yes,
So increasing the deficit doesn't hurt the rich people. It only hurts the poor people, and who cares about them other
Right.
than the poor people?
yeah. Well, the 10% who don't care, it benefits them. Everybody else cares.
Well, it's fortunately or unfortunately, it is those that actually it's maybe less than 10% who actually are at the helm, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and that's probably true of every society. Even
Yes,
go to Stalinist
any
Russia.
place. Yeah, any
The
place.
the bureaucrats ran society, and very likely those bureaucrats would have been successful entrepreneurs in a different environment. So,
I mean, recognize that in USSR, it was communist workers. Then there were the higher ups. They had their own dasha to live in the countryside, whereas the other people were cramped in little quarters. So it's kind of, when you read about all this and you wonder what communism was actually happening. This was the society that had provided privilege to a certain percentage and taken it away from most of the people, and they thrived. They became a terror state like that.
Well, it, again, human beings given an opportunity, the the better, the more talented, with the appropriate drive, etc., are going to probably succeed, whatever the society is. Even in a society that's based on heredity. Um, you know, there's the lord who owns the manor, etc., and then there's the serfs who work the fields.
Yeah.
And there's always some individual who maybe he's a merchant or something. He wanders around and does pretty well because he understands the system and he has the drive and willing to take the risks. So, but is that a bad thing? As long as everybody has the chance. My problem is when you were talking about guilds before.
Yeah.
A guild does a lot of wonderful things, including making sure that somebody who says he's a plumber actually understands what to do with the
Yeah.
pipe wrench.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, they also limit the number of people who can be plumbers
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
that they can keep the pay up.
Yeah.
Nothing's free. And as long as you recognize what the rules are and you make sure that everybody gets a reasonable shot at it, then I personally say, okay, I may not be happy, but okay.
I mean, that's the guild by definition is an exclusionary uh, system in the sense that you only allow qualified plumbers in, and at the same time, because you have you have agreed that they are qualified, you fight for their welfare, you fight for their wages, and it affects the whole society. That the plumber comes in, they only charge. They will have to charge $100 or whatever rate they set up, or 175 or 75. I don't remember now, but that's a standard charge, and you can't argue with it. That's it. And so it benefits the whole guild,
Yeah.
and society has no other chance to do anything else,
Well,
unless you are a plumber by yourself.
well, in theory,
Yes, in theory, yes.
I have no skills in this area, so if you will, I have no dog in the fight. But in theory, you could learn how to be a plumber. At
Yes.
least maybe to deal with the plumbing in your house, at which point you don't have to go to the guild. The interesting thing is that if you live in Burlington, even if you're doing the work yourself, you have to have the, the inspector come down
Yes.
and confirm it, which I think
Yeah.
is a good thing.
Yeah.
But if the inspector says you didn't have a plumber doing it, so therefore it can't be right, the rules have to be reasonably equitable, and everybody's got to have a say in them, including those who aren't citizens.
I mean, I agree with that. The notion that there is this level check on anything that an individual wants to place, and by proxy, put the society through it, so that I want to build a bridge, and I can quickly put it together with ropes and string, and then say this is all qualified, is great. Now, by my design, I walk across, I might fall through myself, but that's different. I can swim and I'm done. But at the same time, it's a good idea that society has checks and balances in place so that everybody does not suffer, and there are protections, and that way, that's why we have to have society built in such a way that there are these in place. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos, and it is chaos in a lot of places. You see bridges have been built, and even while they are inaugurating, the whole bridge falls down. I mean, we have history here where the swinging, I forgot which place it was, the swing, the bridge which was swinging and it fell down. Do you remember that?
No,
Well,
not
no, I've
really,
seen
but I believe you.
several of those. You know,
Yes, I mean, we
ever
had
since I
that.
was a kid, you know, and
Yes.
especially since I was an engineer, I was watching the Tacoma Narrows Bridge go into
Yeah,
oscillation.
Tacoma Narrows Bridge. That's what I remember that. That's fascinating example, and
Yep.
you don't want that. But even recently, there have been other issues, but
Well,
it does happen.
that just goes to poor engineering.
Yeah,
They didn't figure out that the wind could be, could have a frequency. You know, blow and then calm, and blow and then calm, and then all of a sudden it goes into, you know, it keeps going up and down, and you know eventually falls apart.
yeah. I mean, you had the example here, the John Hancock Tower, the facade, the glass was falling down, and they had to replace. I don't know, did they replace the whole thing, or I forgot what was happening at that time.
Yeah,
So
I can half remember that, but not really.
I remember it, but it seemed they did something to reduce the oscillation. I don't know if they
Yes.
stiffened the frame or they put something to balance off. But I do remember that.
yeah,
My first job was in the 8-story John Hancock building.
wow.
And
Okay,
they
a
were
smaller
putting the
one,
new one
okay.
up when I was still there. So I paid more attention to it than I might have otherwise. Yeah, well, I mean, if you go back to early history, somebody put up a bridge and charged people to go across it.
Yeah,
And if you didn't want to go across that bridge, then you did the old-fashioned way, which swim. And everything would be cool, except if the guy who had the bridge started shooting people who were trying to swim across, so they use his bridge. Then I think you have a problem. But that's what happens in a monopoly.
Yeah. The other problem, if there was a heavy rain and you tried to swim across, you'd go downstream.
Details, details.
Oh yeah.
If you start far enough upstream, it works in your favor.
Yeah, you just float. But the problem is, if you try that, you just float and keep floating in the same relative position to the two riverbanks.
Okay. I don't know
no,
enough
and never
about
reach
fluid
the
dynamics.
never reach the bank.
Actually, looking at rivers, do they generally flow down the center, or do they move from side to side?
Down the middle.
As
They-
general?
They go.
Well, they go down, yeah, I understand that. But if I'm in the middle of Vinebrook Brook,
Yeah.
and there's enough water for me to float in, do I stay in the middle if I don't make any action, or does it?
Probably.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. It's immaterial to the conversation.
So what is the verdict, that you will float?
Well,
No.
if you're floating, will you and the river is flowing, will you continue to float in the middle, or will you get pushed off to one of the sides?
Okay.
And that was his question.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that was his question. Okay.
And my assumption is you would continue to float in the middle, even if the river changes direction.
He's the
Because there's
engineer.
I mean, you have the great fluid dynamic equations to look for,
Well,
which is complicated.
So
you need a fluids engineer for that.
Yes.
I'm an electrical.
I see. Okay.
and I'm
Because
a,
in
All I
human
know
body
is
blood-
electrons continue to flow in the same direction in the wire.
I see.
unless they're
Because
alternating current.
in blood flow, the fluid dynamics comes in.
Okay. So let's
That's why I
assume.
thought.
Well, in blood flow, how does it work then?
Pardon me?
In blood flow, how does it work? if there's a particle that's in the middle of your bloodstream, does it stay in the middle or does it wander from one side to the
That's
other?
where it is. That's why I said it's complicated because there are a lot of particles in the blood, and
It-
they change the fluid dynamics.
yeah, it has
And
to get
then
through the
you have
capillaries to
different
get back to the heart,
Oh, yeah.
and you
to
have
get to the
because it's a
veins.
tube. Because fluid in the body, the blood in the body runs in tubes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that tubal dynamics is different than an open river dynamics.
Yes.
Well, also, don't the veins contract, expand and contract to?
The,
To the
the
heartbeat.
the arteries will have the capability of doing that
Okay.
because they have the muscles, but the veins do not have that many muscles.
Oh,
But
okay.
at the same time, our our leg muscles help the veins. So it's quite complicated. It's not that easy because they are not isolated tubes. They are tubes which are flexible, embedded in musculature, which affects everything.
Yep.
Okay. Getting back to who is an American, um, what, other than the fact that we
How
want
much
to,
time do we have?
I'll tell you in a second, we're almost done. Other than the fact that we want to affect who gets elected, are there other advantages or disadvantages to being a citizen versus a resident versus a visitor?
Well, obviously, the if you're a citizen, you have all the privileges of being a citizen as enshrined in the Constitution. But if you are a visitor, you do not. Well, to a certain extent, you do have the facilities available, but with limits, because you are just a visitor. But at the same time, I would imagine providing health care to a visitor is still available, but then there are complications in it, but they still can access should be able to access health care because they are coming into our society. You do not want to just leave them on the road and then let them pass out or whatever. They need if the society should be compassionate enough to have that arrangement in place. And then, of course, that again brings up the question: should a person who is not a citizen and has been living here forever, should they also be entitled to health care? And that as health care as a human right should be available to everybody, but at the same time, that means society has to be flexible enough to provide for that, although it's a burden.
Well, there's the other thing is if we say you're just a visitor, I don't care whether you bleed out on the street or not, that same standard, I would assume, would apply when I go and visit India or France
Yeah,
or Canada.
exactly.
So perhaps maybe that's something that has to be considered in the equation. But there's something, for example, one of the things that the Republicans are very worried about is that non-citizens will get benefits from Medicaid or other programs, and the law says that non-citizens can't.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. If the law says that, how can they access the benefits? That's what I do. For example, SNAP benefits, uh, they cannot get that. So where is the leak?
Well, the leak may be that people are not aware. You know, they're worried that all the SNAP benefits are going to these people who just take advantage. They don't work. They don't do anything. They're not citizens. They're just here as freeloaders. And
Well,
if the fact is they can't, or they shouldn't, and some percentage will always, whatever the law is, there will be a percentage of people who will break it. Like, for example, armed robbery. Definitely against the law.
yes.
But there are people
Citizen
who
or
do,
not.
yeah, there are people
Citizen
who
or
do
not, yeah,
armed
citizen or not.
robbery and maybe do it over and over again. But you don't say that nobody is allowed to go into a store because somebody may have a gun and rob the store. You're killing the patient without for no particular good reason. And going back to something we were talking about earlier about you were saying about voting, 87 out of several billion votes cast over some
Yeah.
period of time, and probably those were mistakes rather than deliberate attempts to violate the system. Maybe we need to educate our population as to what is really going on, and that there isn't some schlub who's sitting next to you who looks different or speaks different or prays different or whatever, who's taking advantage of you. That you're all in the same boat.
Of that
mean,
number,
reason-
of that number that was people who shouldn't have voted in a particular precinct, would a citizen who voted in a different precinct show up as in that number? Yeah,
They
I
have
think so.
categories because they have 9 categories. I didn't go through each one. I just got the summary that there were 1,620 voters, fraud voters, and fraudulent voters, and aliens were 100, and non-residents were 25. So they were supposed to be in one place and they voted in some other place. But a lot of these were there were convictions associated with them, or they were actually discovered by the officials while the voting was happening. So
Oh, okay.
it's kind of a report that goes across the states. And but just to one point about what Bob pointed out, somebody getting benefits. You have right now. There was a news report about how the TSA workers are not being paid, and the some TSA workers are not able to get money, so they are now dependent on the largesse of the community. Now there are food pantries being set up in the at airports so that the TSA workers can take food home. And how sad it is that individuals who are supposed to protect the aviation industry and the people who get on the planes are suffering because of the skirmishes that are happening between different political groups.
Well, I'll give you another one. Back in when Gingrich shut down the government against Clinton, and I don't remember the details, almost immediately the Congress realized that air traffic controllers would be gone. And they immediately voted an exception that air traffic controllers should get paid. But we haven't done that in many, many years. And maybe we should say that we're paying our soldiers.
Yeah.
The government shut down, but they get paid. Why can't we look at air traffic controllers the same way as TSA people? I'm going to get on a plane in about 3 weeks.
Oh,
and
okay.
if things are as long as they are right now, I may have to get in line today.
Well,
We'll
that's
see
a
ya.
long journey. That's a long journey.
It's an attempt in the same way as Iran is shutting down the Strait of Hormuz so that everybody feels the pain. You use what you have.
Yeah.
And right now the federal government has the fact that the population wants to get on an airplane. And the alternative is going to be, well, we'll drive. We'll take an extra day and we'll drive. Oh, we're going to be paying twice as much for gas. Well, what the hell?
Well, that's what is happening right now. So,
And actually, that's a consideration I may think about driving down to Florida rather than flying. I've done
so
it
are
before.
will you be able to drive in one